Okay, so it's August 1st, 2011. It's Jeff Rutherford. I'm interviewing Charles Terry Rutherford. You will tell me about.
I think when we were talking before that, told you about Grandma Dawson, our grandmother, we called Mother Mac, Anna Dawson, that they came to Dodge County and they worked for someone else for a year. Then they went over to Pulaski County. My grandfather did, or great grandfather, and found the farm and I guess purchased it and they came back and they was the Okmulgee River separated Dodge County from Pulaski County. So they hired two steamboats called the Little Idler and Gilbert. They loaded a family and livestock and wagons and onto those steamboats, and they went down river, which I think was and the name of the landing in Pulaski County was McDonald's Landing, and they went down the river for about 5 miles and come ashore back of the farm property they had bought, and so they unloaded the animals and the wagons, and they drove in from there to their farmland.
It was that Mother Mac, who was my great grandmother.
Right.
That was that her and her husband that did that.
She was about 7 years old.
Oh,
it
so
was
she was
her mother, which was and her husband. Her husband was John Wesley Dawson, and mother was
Anyway,
our great grandmother. Daddy Mac, who Mother Mac, who later married, still lived. His family was already in Pulaski County. So they came ashore and went into their farm, and that farm is still in the family today. One of my mom's first cousins, his name was also John Wesley, and he after he went in the service during World War II, he come out and he started. My grandfather had passed away, and he managed the farm for Grandma Dawson, as we all called her, old great grandmother. And he inherited the bulk of the farm when she.
and
Christine, what was Grandma Dawson's first name? I can't escape it. Was it Mother Mac? Was Anna? Was it
I don't know. It's
not
in
Jane? Was it Jane?
I can't remember. It's in Noah's book back behind.
okay, we'll figure it out. And so after we didn't record this, but after we recorded, you were telling me about someone who used to be kin to you, where they had an African American driver.
Yeah,
I
I'm going
remember
to tell you,
that.
that was Grandma Dawson, my great grandmother's. As I went up into probably 12 or 13 years old, I spent most of the summer between schools with Mother Mac and Daddy Mac, and they've actually lived in two different houses on their property over years, and Mother Mac was still living in one whenever she passed away. But I remember my great grandmother. She had two daughters that never married, that stayed, lived with them. And they had one of the earlier cars, and this would have been in probably late 40s, early 50s. Had a car, and they had a black man who worked for them on the farm. But his primary job was to look after the car and chauffeur them around where they needed to go. He was the driver.
Was this around Rochelle, or was it?
No, it was around Hawkinsville. They lived their farm was probably 6 or 7 miles out from Hawkinsville going toward Abbeville. And but he would take them in to do their grocery shopping every week, and he would go around with him in the grocery store and load up all the groceries, and he kept that car shined and looking immaculate. But he normally was dressed in a black coat, white shirt, and always was real neat and all. That always struck me as at that foreign time as that was something I guess was impressed with.
And I think we talked about this a little bit, but what was your memory of when you were growing up of African Americans and blacks living in Rochelle?
Okay. My memory was, but as you know, we were mainly sharecroppers. We didn't own our own farm, but we talked about it with sharecroppers, and most of the farmers we worked with either had a black family living on their property that worked with them, or there was a black family in the community that worked with the various farmers there. And so we worked right along in the fields with them. And I guess I was up on into high school before I began to realize that how some of the people, mistreated them and probably cheated them a little bit out of their labors and all. But since we didn't go to school with them and all, and we just saw them all out in the fields and all, we didn't socialize. I can remember a few times one family that they had a couple of boys that I shot basketball with and things like that for a little while and all. But it wasn't something that was encouraged by the whites to do that.
So you just didn't socialize with them? You just leave them?
Just saw them. This one neighbor we had, lady, she was, I guess, Mama was real friends with her, and we would go to her house, and she would always, when we happened to go to her house around that, she'd give us a snack, and we, in fact, after we moved on into town, we went by and visited with her a couple of times. I remember my youngest sister, Jane, when she was born, we all went over to her house when the night the doctor was coming out to deliver her, and we spent the night with her on pallets in her house. And so I know I never heard Mama talk bad about them after I got in high school, and then I began to hear some of the farmers and the others, realize there were a lot of prejudice and some unfair treatment going on.
Right.
But I got out of high school in '58, and that was just before maybe there was a little rumblings of the civil rights movement was starting. So I wasn't feel too much in that. I know when I went in the Army right out of high school, and that's the first time that was integrated, and so I was in the barracks with blacks and as well as whites and all. And I know it really didn't. I don't remember it being a real big problem for me.
And what were your memories later on of like Martin Luther King and stuff? I mean, because some of that happened around Macon a little bit.
Yeah, well, I've become aware. I guess I knew what was going on. I was following the news and all. And I remember I had to make a decision about what I thought about them, because at that time Mercer University was affiliated with the Georgia Baptist Convention, and we were sending missionaries out foreign countries, and they had a black guy to profess faith, and helped him come back to Mercer as a student, one of the first black students there. And they had a church co-located on the campus of the university. And he was going to go to church over there, and the church turned him away, and I realized early on, I said, this can't be right. I said, we don't send people out to try to teach them our faith or about the Bible that we couldn't in turn deny them a chance. And so I guess after that, then I began to work for the federal government, and I was also a very integrated situation. And,
Right.
and I was working with blacks, and I know when they started to integrate the schools, the only thing that I guess in my mind, I felt like maybe, and I don't know whether it would have, in hindsight, would have been better or not, that maybe they should have just started integrate the first grade and then let them go to the second and do it over a gradual thing. It might have been easier to start, but I don't know whether that would have made a difference or not. Of course, the blacks were impatient and weren't going to settle for that at that time.
Right. And what was your memory of, I know we're skipping around here, but what was your memory of, like, when you heard that Martin Luther King had been shot? Do you remember specifically?
Well, my memory was, I can't say I was surprised because there had been threats against him, but it come after there had been some riots in L.A. and other large cities, and I think to a lesser degree, I think Atlanta dodged most of that. But I was really afraid that a race war was going to break out. It was just going to really be sad day in our history.
Do you remember where you were personally when you heard about it?
No, I don't. I'm sure I probably was at work or either heard it on the news after I got home. But like I can remember when Jack Kennedy, what I was doing
what was your memory of that when
I was.
President Kennedy?
I hadn't been working on the base but a couple of months, and I was working in a warehouse, and a guy kept a radio going in the office, and I was working. I heard the news come on over there, and I was really shocked by that because I was still in the reserve, and I was expecting that maybe it was a foreign conspiracy that may be going to lead to a war, and maybe called back into the service and all, but I was shocked because I had liked Kennedy and thought he was doing a good job and a real charismatic individual.
Right. So going back a little bit, what are your memories of like grammar school and grade school? Do you have any specific memories around that?
Well, I started school actually in Abbeville, which is one of the 4 small towns in Wilcox County where I grew up. And I come down with a disease called Bright's disease. The kid I swore. Anyway, it kept me out of school for a good part of the year.
Of your first year?
First year, and so they would have let me go into the second grade, but they suggested it's a bit so much and I may want to start back on the first grade, so I did. But we moved over a few miles, and I was in the Rochelle school district then. So I went to school in Rochelle up to middle of the 6th grade, and from middle of 6th grade to middle of 8th grade, I moved over to another little town, Pitt, still in Wilcox County.
And when you were moving to go to another farmhouse?
Going to work for a different guy. They were constantly coming to us because they were 5 kids that were of working age along with my mom, and that was a lot of everything was done manually, and it was really a labor source that they really wanted to get. And so then I went to middle 8th, and we moved back to Rochelle, and that's when Mom, I think, went to work for that shirt factory, textile in Taylor, Rochelle. We lived, first time I hadn't lived out in the country, was in the little town of Rochelle, which is probably 1,000 people or less.
Right.
But my oldest brother Daryl was still farming, and we would still most of us we would still help go out and work on the farm, even though we were living in town. But I did begin to get little jobs around town, and one of them I went to work in the movie theater selling popcorn and ice cream, snack, things like that. And I love that because I got to get to see all the movies at free change, and so I really liked that one job. And then I started playing. Got a little older. Had a grocery store, Piggly Wiggly, and I went to work there. Well, between the theater, I worked for a dry cleaner where I'd go pick up and deliver laundry and all for a few months. After I started a football team, and the coach wanted me to play, and my mom said he can't. He's got to work and all, and so they found me the job with that dry cleaning business to work with them, and that gave me a chance to make a little money to contribute to the family, and that freed me up to practice and play football.
And when did you start playing sports?
Well, I started, of course, played all three of them in high and varsity basketball. In a small school, football, basketball, baseball were three main sports.
And had you played before high school? I mean, like on the farm?
Oh, we always had a basketball goal, and that's what we did. We would shoot baskets, and during baseball season on Sunday afternoon after church, we always get up a bunch of the boys and sometimes get up a game and play. So I was playing and loved it. After we got in town, I was able to play basketball in the gym. In fact, after I started playing B team on the 8th grade, we couldn't play varsity till the 9th grade. I was a starter most of the time, even in the 9th grade, and coach give me a key, and I would, when I wasn't working or something, I'd spend a lot of time shooting hoops and things like that with other people.
And what position did you play in football?
Football, we played both ways. I was an offensive guard, and then they called it tackle, but it be what they called a very nose tackle. I was playing over the center on defense and right guard on offense.
And trying to think of what else. What were your memories of playing in those games, those football games?
Oh, the ball sports is really not having a father around and not come in contact with some of the the farmers being sort of male figures in church and on the farm and all, and my coach, especially when Mike Jones, become very important and really I don't know if I'd have made it out of high school if it hadn't been for sports, but I loved it, and it built up my self-esteem, because I think for the first time I had people cheering for me and giving me congratulations, and when we did well and things like that, and it was you get even in a small town you get a little recognition, and not a lot to do, and the sports are pretty big around the town.
Mm-hmm. And what were the games like?
Oh, they were great. We would basketball seasons, the gym would usually be packed out, and then when we started the football team, we had really good crowd and support there. Had a Lions Club in town. They helped us with equipment. The guy who was over the local part of the power company, they donated the lights, and a lot of labor and support from the townspeople.
And what you were saying? What do you think would have happened if you hadn't gotten involved in sports?
I don't know. I wonder if I'd even continue. I may have gone to school and wound up in the textile factory around or something like this. I know that I did have in my mind, if I made it through high school, I would maybe go to Macon, Atlanta, and maybe see if I could find a better job. And I didn't. I'd had enough of the working in the cotton fields and the harsh conditions, labor, that I knew I wanted to do something besides that.
Right.
And
I mean, you went into the Army, right?
well, that's what I started to say. That of course the draft was still in place then, and I had found out. I started even before high school. I went around to some businesses in like in the surrounding towns of Cordell, Fitzgerald, and asked about jobs, and they were real hesitant to hire anybody 18 or 19 that you was going to get drafted in a few months or a year and get somebody trained and lose them. And I could see that was going to be a problem, and I found out. Well, the lady worked at the draft board, knew her. She said you can volunteer. I didn't know. I didn't want to go in for 3 or 4 years, like the Navy or Marines, because I wasn't sure how I'd like it. And so she told me about I could volunteer for the draft, and then the next draft round I'd get drafted and only have to go in for 2 years. So I chose to do that, and I started doing this during the latter part of my senior year in high school, and right after I got out of high school, I got the draft notice, and I was in the Army within 15 days or so after I graduated from high school.
Wow. And where did you go to basic training at?
With the basic training in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, which is Columbia, South Carolina.
And did you take a bus up there?
Yeah, they had us to report to Atlanta, to give us a bus ticket to go to Atlanta, and that's where we were, and had the oath inducted into the Army, and then they had charter buses they put us on, carried us on the south to Fort Jackson. Remember when you got there, they about a week you went around getting your shots and issued your clothes and equipment and all this, and then 5 days later they put you on a bus, and they would tell you, they called it, they was a big old tank, where a water tank where the barracks went right up to it, where you had your basic. They call it Tank Hill. I know when we got on the bus, they said, going to Tank Hills, and the closer you are to the tank, the rougher it's going to be, and you're going to be right in the shadow of the corner. And we drove up, and when we started getting off of the bus, they had drill instructors all over the place grabbing us, and one guy got disoriented. He took off down. A couple of them had to run him down. It was something else.
And how long was basic training?
It was 8 weeks, and actually I didn't feel like it. I mean, it was in July and it was hot, but similar to the climate we had in South Georgia, and so. But for the physical part, and they've been playing football, and I was in good shape when I went in, so it was physical wise, it wasn't very taxing to me. And I had
Were you in there from people from all over the U.S.?
Yeah, it was a big group though that had joined together from Virginia. Got big friends with 2 or 3 of them, and they had just started some of those missile units, and these were people who had shown the aptitude for math and things like this, and they had been jointly sworn on television and newspapers. Showed us some articles, and I made friends, and so we had probably because of them had a group that were a little bit beyond what your normal mix of people.
Right. And where did you go after basic training?
Well, after basic, I started to go back to high school. One of our neighbor, Ms. Brazil, who Mama worked for, her parents, Mr. and Ms. Carter. She was a our homeroom teacher and also the typing teacher. She wanted me to take typing, and I wouldn't sign up for it. And she went to my mom, and she said, "Yeah, you are going to sign up." So I took typing. It turned out because I had to type. I was either going to wind up as supply clerk or company clerk, and I went a supply clerk. So I went to a 8-week school. Second 8 weeks was right there at Fort Jackson, and at a different location, and went through supply school where you learn to make out requisitions and things like this, and turned out it was it made my service time not be bad, and it's something I really rather enjoyed.
Because you were able to type.
Able to type, and then when I got into supply, I wound up being, after my second 8 weeks and a couple of weeks, about 10 days leave, I was sent to Germany, Darmstadt, Germany, and I was assigned to a 8-inch Hauser artillery unit. And I was you had 4 batteries, and you had a company which included supply company clerks, people who took care of the arm room and things like that. I was in that, and I really enjoyed the supply part of it. They were, people who worked on the guns and all, they would turn in their little hand tools and all when they broke and all, and you would reissue them, and didn't have them, you would issue them what we call a shoe tag until they wouldn't get placed on order. But I had a black master sergeant who was the supply sergeant, and he and I just got along really well. And he really took care of me when it would come time for guard duty and KP, which they'd rotate around. Most of the time he'd tell them, "Don't mess with my man. I got him doing something there."
That's good. And what was the trip like to Germany? How did you get to Germany?
And that was the worst part, going over there and back. Went on a troop ship, and there was a troop carrier, and I don't remember, but probably 3,000 or 4,000 troops were on there. But you had 3 men assigned to one bunk.
To one bed?
Yeah,
the same bed?
Yep. You had 1 8. You'd sleep 8 hours, then you'd be up. You'd either be on guard duty or working in the kitchen and all, and it was just, and the food was terrible, and I didn't really get seasick, but I didn't have no appetite much on going over there.
And how long of a trip was it?
About 14 days. We stopped in England for 1 day, and they let some people off, and then they went on to Germany the next day. And we got to Germany, got off the train. Off the ship. It was already dark. And they put us on a train, and I probably was on the train for 4 or 5, just about an all-night deal. You got off at Darmstadt and went to your post, and turned out what a real bad deal. I know at first I was homesick, but soon made friends and began to enjoy some of the social parts of being in Germany.
Did you interact with any Germans?
Yeah, I was got to be good friends with one family. I had a friend that was in the army with me, Italian guy. He was in supply also, and they was I never had ate pizza before, and found out about a Italian restaurant run by an Italian family in Germany, and I began to go, and that became my favorite place when I would eat off the post, which wasn't too often. Really, really enjoyed going, and that family it wasn't a place. In fact, wasn't a place that was a regular GI hangout.
Right.
So we would go there and really enjoy it, make us feel welcome.
Also date any German women?
Yes, they actually they had a chapel, and I would go to. It wasn't on our post, but commuting distance. They had to give you. So I'd go to that, and they would have a chaplain that would give you the lead the service, but had a couple that were missionaries over there, and on Sunday nights they would invite the troops, and there was several German, quite a number of young German girls that would go to the service, and so I met a girl going to that and dated her for quite a while, but I did have a girlfriend back home, so I was holding on to that, and tried not to get too seriously involved with somebody.
Right. And how long were you in Germany?
Just over 18 months. In fact, when I come back on a troop carry, and went to a base in New York State that where I was processed out. And, one of the guys that owned the car that lived in Florida, I caught a ride with him, and dropped me off in McRae, Georgia. And after spending about a night on the road, I finally caught a ride and got back to Rochelle.
And when you were over in Germany and when you were in the army, were you saving money, sending it back home? What were you?
You have to remember, we I started off only getting $78 a month. When I got out, I was getting about $140. But yeah, but I sent most of it, well, probably over half of it I sent home. I still had two more than needed help with that.
Right. And what did you do once you got back from hitchhiking or whatever?
Yeah, well, when I got there, I decided to go to Macon, but I did. Girlfriend was there in Macon. We didn't make it after that. But my mama's brother, John Ed, lived there, and I stayed with them for a few weeks. And got a job at Sears, in shipping and receiving.
And where was the
after
Sears
that,
at?
it was on Riverside Drive and corner of 3rd Street, Riverside Drive in Macon. Of course, it long ago moved out to the mall.
Right,
Mall.
right.
But then it was there, and in fact, I could walk a few blocks from where his business was to the store. And after worked there a couple of weeks, I started getting paid. I moved into a board house. Met a couple that went to Rochelle and were going to barber school, living there. Stayed there a while, and then I made friends with another guy working at Sears, single guy. We got an apartment together, shared an apartment, and that's basically where I lived until your mom and I. Well, that's where I met your mom at Sears, and then we started dating and stayed there till we got married and set up an apartment.
And what was it like meeting her? Can you remember?
Yeah, I was working in shipping and receiving. She was working in personnel, but going to part time and going to school at Mercer. She would come in our area to pick up time cards and things like that. I'd be working. I noticed her, and she walks real fast. Then she same way, click, 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 and I found out her name. One of the ladies said her name's Christine Walker. So she'd come by, and I started saying, "Here comes Miss Fast Walker," and there comes Miss Fast Walker. And we began to talk a little bit, and then a couple of ladies intervened and put us together. One she worked with, one I worked with, older ladies at that time, and they went to conspiring to say that they'd make a good couple. Let's get them together, and that's how.
Do you remember how long y'all dated?
About 18 months, I think.
And then got married?
Yeah, it was around 18 months, and shortly after we got married, well, I think even when we got married, she had stopped going to Mercer and went to work for an insurance company, work in administration, and then shortly after we got married, I got on at Robbins and
You started working at
Robbins Air Force Base.
in Warner Robins, Georgia.
Yeah, Warner Robins, Georgia. Of course, that's my career. But she went to work there shortly after that, and
At Robins as well.
yeah, worked there until you and Tony come along, and then she stayed home a few months, and then she got a work job savings and loan where she could, as y'all got a little older, where she could work till 3 o'clock and would be there to be at home when about the time y'all got home from school.
Gotcha. Why don't we just end there and we'll
Okay.
just pick it up?
All right.